Tonight, we're going to talk about a story of defiance that you probably didn't read about in history class. It's about a community that absolutely refused to be intimidated, a night of total chaos in a North Carolina field, and a battle that the Ku Klux Klan would never, ever forget.
Just look at this photo. This captures the exact moment everything just boiled over. You can feel the tension, right? The raw energy of people finally pushing back against pure hatred. And this wasn't just some minor scuffle, nope. This was the climax of a story that had been building for a long, long time.
So that's the big question we're digging into. It sounds kind of unbelievable, doesn't it? A group infamous for terrorizing people forced to literally run for their lives into a swamp by the hundreds of locals they came to scare. To really get how this happened, we've got to go back and set the scene.
Okay, so picture this. We're in Robeson County, North Carolina in the late 1950s. The air is just thick with the tension of the early civil rights movement. And this one county, well, it's a unique kind of tinderbox waiting for a match.
See, unlike most of the Jim Crow South, which was built on a very strict black and white system, Robeson County was different. It was home to three distinct communities, each with its own world, its own schools. You had about 40,000 whites, 20,000 black residents, and then this large, very established community of 30,000 Native Americans.
So who were these Native Americans? They were primarily the Lumbee people. Now, they weren't a tribe living on a reservation in the way you might imagine. They were deeply woven into the local fabric. Farmers, business owners, military veterans. But they had this powerful, distinct identity, all built around their shared history and deep family ties to the land. And that identity? Oh, it had been a fight. For over 100 years, they had been battling for recognition. In the 1830s, they were stripped of basic rights. Later, the state just relabeled them. They were constantly fighting to define themselves on their own terms, finally winning state recognition as the Lumbee just a few years before our story kicks off. The main takeaway here is this. This was a community that knew how to stand its ground.
So into this already complex mix steps our antagonist, James W. Catfish Cole. He was a Klan leader from just over the border in South Carolina, and he was looking to make a name for himself by stirring up racial hatred. Robeson County, with its unique three-race dynamic, became his target.
And Cole didn't just show up and plan a quiet rally. Oh no. He deliberately set out to provoke the Lumbee community, basically trying to bait them into a reaction.
Just 5 days before his big rally, Cole and his followers started burning crosses. One was near the home of an indigenous woman who was in a relationship with a white man. Another was to terrorize a Native American family who had dared to move into a white neighborhood. These were not random acts. They were targeted messages of terror aimed right at the heart of the Lumbee community.
Now, the local sheriff, a guy named Malcolm McLeod, he saw disaster coming. He actually drove all the way to South Carolina to personally beg Cole to call the whole thing off because he was afraid it would get violent. Cole's response was just dripping with arrogance. He told the sheriff, "It sounds like you don't know how to handle your people. We're going to come show you." Just incredible. He didn't see the Lumbee as a community, but as a problem that needed to be handled. So the stage was set. Cole had picked his fight. The Lumbee, who had been pushed to the edge and had a long history of defending themselves, were not about to back down. And that brings us to the night of January 18th.
I mean, just look at this matchup. It's almost comical. Cole thought he'd get maybe 500 Klan supporters to show up. He got about 50, and most of them weren't even from North Carolina. The Lumbee, on the other hand, they turned out in force. We're talking 300 to 500 people. And here's the kicker. Many of them were armed World War II veterans. They knew exactly what they were doing. The hunters were about to become the hunted.
Imagine this scene. The Klansmen are gathered in this cold field, and then cars, dozens of them, full of Lumbee men and women, start lining the roads. They get out and just start streaming towards the rally, forming this massive, silent circle around the tiny group of Klansmen. Then the shouts start, a rising chant of, "We want Cole." The Klan's big show of force had just turned into a terrifying siege. And here's how fast it all went wrong for the Klan. The whole rally was lit by one single bare light bulb. Someone took it out, shot it, or smashed it, and the entire field was plunged into total darkness. In that split second of silence, the Lumbees opened fire. Now, most of the shots were just fired into the air, but the sound was deafening. Pure panic. Klansmen abandoned their own families, scrambling for their cars, driving into ditches, fleeing on foot into the cold, dark swamp.
In just a few minutes, the so-called Battle of Hayes Pond was over. It was a complete, total, and humiliating rout.
But the story doesn't end there. The aftermath is just as incredible. You couldn't write a better ending. Catfish Cole, the great and powerful Grand Wizard, spent the next 2 days hiding from the law in a swamp. Meanwhile, the Lumbee drove back to their main town of Pembroke in a victory parade. They had captured the Klan's banner, and 2 of their veterans wrapped themselves in it for what became one of the most iconic photos of the era.
And the story of the Klan's humiliation? It spread like wildfire. It was so powerful that folk singer Malvina Reynolds wrote a song about it, immortalizing the event. And that one line perfectly captures the vibe. It became a story of ridicule, not a story of Klan martyrdom.
The official reaction was also pretty telling. North Carolina's governor came out and firmly blamed the Klan for starting the whole thing. And get this, from all the way in Alabama, Governor Jim Folsom sent a telegram praising the Lumbee, saying he hoped the Indians would, quote, continue to beat the paleface. The Klan found themselves condemned from almost every direction.
And then came the ultimate irony. Catfish Cole, the man who came to handle the Lumbee, was arrested and charged with inciting a riot. The prosecutor basically pointed to the hundreds of Lumbee in the courtroom and warned the jury that if they didn't convict Cole, this was just going to keep happening. Cole was found guilty. And in a final poetic twist of fate, one of the first judges to hear a related case was Lacey Maynard, a Lumbee himself.
So you see, the Battle of Hayes Pond wasn't just some brief, chaotic night. It left a lasting legacy for the Lumbee people and for the entire history of resistance in America.
Before this night, very few people outside of North Carolina had even heard of the Lumbee. As one of their own historians later said, until the Klan thing, people didn't even know there were Lumbees. This single act of defiance put them on the national map, turning them from a regional community into symbols of courage.
Today, this historical marker stands near the site. It's an official acknowledgement from the state that something important happened here. That this wasn't just a riot, it was a community defending its own dignity and winning.
And that really brings us to the final thought here. The story of Hayes Pond is so much more than a historical footnote. It's this powerful reminder that history isn't just made by famous leaders in big cities, it's also made by ordinary people, by farmers, veterans, mothers and fathers who, when they're faced with hatred, decide together that they will not be moved. And it really makes you ask, what happens when an entire community decides, all at once, to stop being afraid?